Okay, so this video is not going to be about D&D. It's going to be about Monster Hunter, a topic that I guess I'm knowledgeable about. I've been playing for 20 years. So, to all you that watch my videos, is mostly my D&D group, and most of you in my D&D group have gotten into the game. So, I don't need to explain the game, but I'm going to explain the game. You hunt monsters. That's it. End of video. No, I'm kidding. So one of the main things, and I've tried to get a lot of people into Monster Hunter over the years. Some people it sticks with, some people it doesn't. Some people, they'll play for a little bit, as long as like the whole friend group is playing. They'll dabble and then kind of move on. And there's nothing wrong with that. That makes sense to do. Whoa, that sun is in a really funny place. All right, I'll do that. I guess it doesn't really matter. But twist the phone a little. Not doing a whole lot. All right, I'll just do that. Yeah, okay, I guess that's how we're recording. So a lot of people have bounced off Monster Hunter in the past, and it's for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of these reasons have lessened over time. The first Monster Hunter game was incredibly difficult, super obtuse, felt really clunky. Did I say obtuse? Incredibly obtuse. Not super rewarding immediately. Like, there was a lot of delayed gratification. But the main thing Monster Hunter did well was reward the time and effort you put into it and give you that payoff. A monster you've been stuck on for a while, you see it go down. Oh my, there is nothing fucking better. Just, there isn't. And, these are similar feelings you can get from a game like Elden Ring or the Souls games, but in my opinion, it's always been Monster Hunter. Bloodborne in particular holds a special place in my heart, and it kind of hits some similar beats, but Bloodborne is different. But I'm not going to get into that. That's probably a whole separate video. So, Monster Hunter combat is super deliberate in things you have to do for a variety of reasons. One, there's no real lock-on function. Like, you can have the camera lock where the camera will continually follow the monster, which is a fairly recent addition. So, as a result, I don't use it. It's just not part of my Monster Hunter muscle memory. It's just not something I do, so I don't use it. But that's another thing. There's nothing wrong with using that. It just prevents you from having to tap L1 to focus the camera on the monster every once in a while. But in one of our group chats, as a few minutes ago, one of the players was talking about skill floors and skill ceilings and talking about weapon differences, because now everybody's been playing the game for a week and a half, I think. Maybe a little longer, I don't know. But playing the game for a little bit. Maybe a week, whatever it is. They're into the game enough that now things are starting to really make sense, and they're starting to really understand a lot of things. So you can start to have these more complicated musings and thoughts about the game. And it was this idea of differing skill floors and skill ceilings per the weapons. And I'll say one right away, the game itself has a really high skill floor and skill ceiling, both. To me, Monster Hunter has always, the type of practice and gameplay and practice and effort in versus skill you get out feels really similar to a fighting game for me. Every little minute change you make pays off usually in small ways, but it pays off. Like every little adjustment you make to your spacing, every little conscious change you make to keeping yourself more aware of the monster, every little pattern you learn helps. To the point, there's been several hunts that we do in multiplayer where one of the players asked me, like, how many times did you get hit that hunt? I was like, I don't know, 3? Because that's just how it goes. I've been playing these games so long. Typically, that's what happens. And that's not some kind of, like, I'm this old monster hunter master. Like, no, that's not how it works. It's just, like, built up enough, like, conditioning, muscle memory, past experience with the games that as long as I make the correct choices, I'm on top of things, generally I'm just not going to have an issue with anything. There was, in one of the games, I remember there was a point where, and I swear this is relevant. This isn't just some kind of like bragging thing. There was a point we were doing a hunt, and it was real late at night. I worked that day, so I was tired as hell. And I remember me and the guy I used to play with. It was just me and one guy at the time. Cross, I might have mentioned him. He's also was my Soul Calibur training partner for a long time. But we were hunting a monster called a Barioth, which is like a ice saber-toothed tiger dragon. And we're running up to it in this like big open snowfield. And I remember like kind of blinking, like my eyes like closing a little bit, and then when I opened them again, the monster was dead. It was the end of the hunt, and I had carved it fully. Like, what happened? Like, oh, we did the quest. It was great. That was the fastest we've ever killed it. What are you talking about? I think I fell asleep. And as far as I know, I like half fell asleep during that fight. Like my eyes were still open. I was still functioning, but I guess, muscle memory and autopilot took over. And I was conditioned enough on that monster that I didn't need to, kind of figure anything out. It just kind of happened. And ultimately, that's kind of what you want in a game like this. You want to understand enough about the monster, you want to understand enough about your weapon, that you can sort of autopilot things. Granted, as long as you're awake, that's not going to happen. It's like, usually you can't autopilot, you can't just turn it on. But that's also the type of thing that in video games in general, the type of thing that I've chased my whole life. The in the flow state, Zen mode moments where my brain goes completely blank, that kind of thing. This turned out to be a different video than I thought I was making, but that aside, the way I'm gonna tie that back into weapons. Different weapons have different learning requirements and skill floors. Like, you'll see people talk about how, like, sword and shield, really easy to learn. And the skill floor is generally lower, but the sword and shield has a wide variety of options available to it. Like, it has a standard, like, I'm going to use PlayStation button terminology. It has, like, its standard triangle combo. And I haven't played Sword and Shield for a while, but my buddy Cross, he does. That's his main weapon, especially in Wilds. It's got its standard triangle combo, which it's just a combo. I think they changed it somehow. Then it's got its circle button attacks, which are something that a lot of weapons kind of used to have, which are like the spin, the circle, the radial slashes. It's usually like kind of an area attack around you in one way or another. Some weapons, it's kind of more of an uppercut, like with the dual blades, the way it used to be. And originally it was just that. And then the triangle and circle buttons together do a kind of like finishing move. I think it's called Spinning Reaper now. is just like the big, like it's the most powerful hit the weapon has. But I think it has something else called I don't know what it's called, the big chop. It's some sort of chargeable attack. I don't know how to do it. But it has that. But those circle attacks on the sword and shield, there's both like, I think you could do it like there's one version of it where it uses the sword and it does more damage, and there's another version that does like a shield bash instead. And those have two different use cases. The sword attack generally will do more damage, whereas the shield will do blunt damage, KO damage. It has a different hitbox, like it hits kind of above it a little bit, so depending on your spacing, where the monster is, what you're fighting, that could be more useful. I know the weapon also has a new like sliding slash, which is like an advancing move. I think it still has like a jumping slash, but I don't know how to do it. Again, I haven't looked at this weapon in a while, so I don't know exact inputs. It has this sliding slash, which is, I guess, probably a slower advancing slash, but it has some iframes to it. It's also got an invincible back hop, where it's kind of like a command dodge that you do differently. I know it has invincibility, but you can only chain it after certain things, and then you can go into some special follow-ups after that. So, like, just looking at all that, the sword and shield has a lot of different options and tools and use cases. And that's the thing. In Monster Hunter, you can describe a lot of the weapon movesets and call them tools instead of attacks. And tools is a fighting game term. Like, this character has these kinds of tools. They have high-low mix-up, they have this, they have cross-ups, they have step kills. Like, you know, they have a lot of strong tools in this category, in this category, in this category. And that tends to be the terminology that I will use around Monster Hunter weapons. So something like the dual blades is seen as another like lower skill floor weapon. You just hit the button and spin and do the attacks. And in some cases, it's probably relatively true. It's not super difficult to grasp the concept of. It's just it has an attack chain, it's got an advancing move, and then it's got like a semi-berserk state. Instead of like the button that you use to block, R2, for other weapons, on dual blades, you do a little pose and you go into a berserk state. It drains your stamina, you get boosted attack power, your dodge changes to be faster. Your advancing slash gets better. And whenever you attack with it, you fill up a gauge, and when that gauge gets full, whenever you exit demon mode, you enter archdemon mode, and your normal mode gets powered up to be more like demon mode. You get that better advancing attack, you get boosted attack power, you get the demon dodge, or the demon dashes. And then in Wilds in particular, that gauge is also used for the blade dance chain. And there's 5 different inputs for it. They're all triangle and circle. But there's 2 of them in Archdemon mode, and there's 3 of them in Demon mode. And you can chain back and forth. The longest version of it is you can start in Demon mode, do Blade Dance 1, then you hit R, and you'll do Archdemon Flurry 1, then you hit R again, Demon Dance 2, or Blade Dance 2, hit R again, Demon Flurry 2, R again, Blade Dance 3, the finisher. And that'll all of those use gauge. And the main like big skill to develop with dual blades is monster awareness. Like, where can I fit in these longer attack chains? Because if you're just mashing the button and doing these long combos, you're going to get punched. You're going to get tail slapped. You're going to get breathed upon. All those types of things. And it's similar with the hammer. The hammer is a relatively simple weapon to get a handle on, but its charge attacks, aren't just more time in, more damage out. Like, the longer you hold the charge, the more damage it does. No, it's more the longer you charge it, the quote better attack you get, and they have different use cases. Like a level 1 charge is a simple smack, and then you can do a triangle button for a follow-up, and then it'll go back into your triple pound, your standard combo. And so your level 1 charge is just a combo link. Your triangle, 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 into level 1 charge, triangle, 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 level 1 charge. Like you can loop that as long as you want. And that's your best like sustained damage. If you have like an infinite opening, that's probably your best case. Your level 2 charge is this big advancing uppercut, and that's your best option to like close distance, punish something that has a good opening, but you had to get way out of the way of. And then your level 3 charge is the super pound, which is this big, slow, heavy hit. That's your best, like, I say slow, it's not really that slow for how much damage it does, but you have to charge up to it. So with small openings, if you're charging up, you can punish those small openings really, really hard. So it becomes a question of monster awareness. Where can you fit these different charges in? And then also it has like a bigger like knockdown exploitation move in the Big Bang combo, which is like a 5-hit thing. That only works if, you know, the monster's going to be down for like 10 seconds. Use that. Then you've got weapons like the switch axe, the charge blade, hunting horn, which are all more complicated weapons. This, like the switch axe, looks more complicated, but its game plan is relatively simple. Its axe mode is like relatively quick, normal mobility, good range, but its damage isn't as good as sword mode, which has lower mobility and limited attacks because it uses up your sword gauge. And what you want to do is weave in and out of axe and sword mode, fill up the amped gauge, which powers up sword mode, and then just exploit openings as much as you can. It's pretty simple, but the most complicated part of using switch axe is learning, one, how those gauges interact, when is the best time to do those things, but that's kind of standard monster awareness stuff. But also its attacks are kind of all over the place. It has a wide variety of different attacks. It's not like it attacks generally in like, you know, a vertical downward chop way. It's got attacks that are all over the place. It's got like wide radial swings, it's got downward chops, it's got upward chops, it's got side diagonal hits, thrusts, it's got all sorts of attacks. And knowing how to space yourself to land those most optimally is one of the more difficult, one of the finer points of switch axe. Whereas charge blade has a lot of complicated interactions with it. In sword mode, it builds up a gauge, and then, or it builds up like an aura. It goes from white to yellow to red. And then when it gets to red, you want to store that charge in files, and then you can spend the files in different ways. The files can be spent to like power up the sword and the axe, or maybe just the, I don't know, power up the weapon. And then you can also spend those files in axe form, which is its slower, more damaging form, to cause like little explosions and all sorts of stuff. And the minutia and finer points of that weapon come from spacing, knowing when to charge, when you can switch to axe mode and spend your files without overcharging, knowing how to use your guard points that the weapon has between its transformed states. Then hunting horn. This weapon is relatively complicated because it's a buffing weapon. It's got all of its attacks generate a musical note, and then once you have a certain amount, like anywhere from I think 2 to 4 notes, you can enter a recital mode and spend them and cause different effects depending on the combination of notes. And the finer points of that weapon come from both learning all the standard stuff, monster awareness, the awareness of your own moveset, down to simply knowing how all these notes interact with each other. Some of the other weapons are like relatively complicated, like Longsword has these longer, complicated combo chains that you want to end a certain way to build up your spirit aura, from white to yellow to red. There's ways to spend charges of the aura, which take you back to the previous color, but it's got counterattacks in both its Foresight Slash, which you can access from basically anything, and then you can also you have to go into a special stance where you sheath the weapon in a special sheath, and then you've got like an EI quick draw thing that if you time it right is a parry, and you can avoid damage with that, and that spends gauge, but it also loops into a way to build gauge, and it's got all sorts of like complicated combo routes and stuff, and what you want to land, when you want to land it, what it does to your gauge, how much gauge it builds, what gauge it spends, all that kind of shit. And then you've got a weapon like the Great Sword. It's a big sword and you charge it up, and that comes from monster awareness as well. Like, okay, I've got 3 seconds. I can probably get a level 3 charge here. I can get a level 2 charge here. I don't have enough time to charge anything. I can just hit it with a normal attack. That's all Greatsword really does. And you've got like the Lance and Gun Lance. It's similar things. Like, how can I weave my counters and blocks and stuff in between the monsters' attack patterns? Where can I like just land combos? Where do I have to counter? Where do I have to block? All that type of shit. And every weapon's different with it, but I would not call any of the weapons low skill because the game isn't low skill. That's just how it works. I'll probably have more to talk about on this subject, but that's it for now.